Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Today, our webinar is going to be an everyday English lesson on convincing others. So we're going to talk about how we can convince other people that we are right and how to persuade them that maybe persuade them to do what we want them to do. Okay, so I hope that this is something which is useful, which will be useful in everyday life if you have some people to convince internationally. So, hello Beata, hello Regina, Martin and Sylvia. It's great to see you. Hello Magda and everyone else. My name is Joanna Dębowska. I have been teaching English for about 20 years and I have been with Tutlo for a few months. Okay, so let's get going. Our webinar, as usual, is going to last about 30 minutes. And of course, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, do not hesitate to type them in the chat window. And at the end, I'm going to run 2 short poll questions. Our webinar is going to have 2 parts. In the first part, we are going to discuss words and phrases in English, which are useful when we try to make people do something, right? Because we need the words, we just need to know the words and structures which we can use to make people do what we want them to do. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some little tricks about the art of persuasion. So maybe what is it good to do, how to kind of approach other people so that they do what we want them to do. So let's begin with the vocabulary. First, let's discuss the difference between 2 words, convince somebody to do something and persuade somebody to do something. So when we convince someone to do something, we try to make them believe something they didn't believe before. So this is about influencing their opinion. We are not making them do something. We just want them to change their opinion. Hello, Alicia. On the other hand, persuade somebody to do something is to try to make someone do what we want them to do. So convince is about opinions, right? And persuading is more about actions, right? We want someone to undertake a certain action. Let's have a look at the example. Let's say Mary's health hasn't been very good recently. She has some problem with her blood sugar level, and she went to the doctor with her blood test results. The doctor saw the results and asked Mary about her diet, and he found out that actually she ate a lot of sugar and that she was in danger of diabetes, right? The disease where the blood sugar level is not controlled properly by the body. So first of all, unfortunately, the problem is that Mary thinks that sugar is great. She believes that sugar is very healthy. So first, the doctor tries to convince her that too much sugar is unhealthy. So he shows her maybe some articles, or he tells her about some research which proves that sugar is very unhealthy. So he tries to make her change her opinion, right? And once he succeeds, he tries to persuade her to change her diet, right? He says, but please try to change your diet. So he tries to influence her actions. That's the difference between convincing and persuading. Now, here we have 3 more words. They are a bit similar in meaning. So suggest, right? Suggest something, suggest doing something. So here it's more about the structure than about the meaning, right? Because I think most of you understand what suggesting is, right? We suggest something, so we say that maybe this should be done, right? And maybe this is the good solution. Okay, it's important to remember that in English we suggest doing something, or we can suggest that I or someone do something, or that I should do something. Now, propose is similar, but Let's be a little bit careful with the verb propose. We'll see in the next slide why, right? Propose is used, I think, more often in more official contexts, and I would suggest using the verb suggest more. Okay, and the recommend is trying to tell someone that this particular choice, this particular product, or let's say maybe dish or film is good, right? That this is the thing to do. So recommend something, recommend doing something, or that we do something, or that something should be done. So let's have a look here and remember about the second meaning of the verb to propose, because in Polish propose is like the verb proponować, right, which is similar to propose, is used more often. In English, not that often, that's why suggest is a better choice. But when we say to propose to somebody, we mean that it's about asking them to marry you. So we say John proposed to Mary. It means John asked her, will you marry me? Okay, now here we have two structures which you might find useful. Do you think it would be better to do something, or wouldn't it be better to do something, right? Would it be better to do something is also possible. Now, these four structures are also used when we want to invite someone to go somewhere, but of course they can be also used for suggesting. So the important thing again is to remember the structure, because we say, how about doing something? What about doing something? But if you prefer the structure, would you like, you have to say, would you like to do something? And if you say let's, you say let's do. So remember, how about, what about goes with doing, right? And would you like goes with to do. Let's goes just with do. And here we have a slide on insisting. Insisting is when someone really doesn't want to do something, right? But we insist. So say, but it should be done. It must be done. We should do it, right? This is insisting. And here again, we have two sentences. We should do something, or we ought to do something. What's the difference? There is no difference in meaning between we should do and we ought to do. This means exactly the same. The only thing to remember again is that with ought, you use to. So we say we ought to do something, but we should do something. We can also use the verb insist. I would say this is used in more formal contexts. I insist that we do it, or I insist on doing it. Okay, so this was the vocabulary part, the vocabulary and phrases. Now we are going on to discuss the art of persuasion. What should we remember about when we want to persuade someone? So the first thing is to get the right timing. Try to persuade people immediately after they thanked you. So if you did something for other people and you're thinking about asking them for something, do it exactly in the moment or just after they thanked you. And to increase your chances of getting what you want, if you want to ask them to perform some task as for you, try to start doing this task so that they have a feeling that maybe it's a smaller thing to do. Let's take an example. Mary and John are a couple, and let's say maybe this time John cooked a wonderful dinner for both of them, and they finished eating, and John doesn't like washing up. Mary doesn't like washing up either. So Mary says, oh, John, thank you for this wonderful dinner. And he says, you're welcome. After which he takes a plate and starts washing it, or maybe puts it into the dishwasher. And he says, you're welcome. Could you please do the dishes? And here John knows the art of persuasion very well, because according to research, this is the best moment to ask someone to do something. Now, we should try to give people an incentive. An incentive is a kind of motivation to do something, right? We should try to motivate them. How? We have 3 types of incentives: economic, moral, and social incentives. So, economic incentive, this is simple. This is about money, or about what someone will gain, maybe not directly, but sooner or later financially too, right? One thing to note is that apparently it's better to talk about what people will lose if they don't do what we want them to do than to tell them what they will gain. This is maybe a bit counterintuitive, but apparently that's how it is. A moral incentive is showing people how the world will be better. So showing them that if they do what we want them to do, the world will become a better place. And social incentive is showing people that everybody else is doing the same, right? So maybe even naming a few friends of this particular person or some other people they know who have done a similar thing. Now, this slide is about the art of reciprocity, so prawo wzajemności. So try to give people something first. This is why very often when you go to a shopping center, to a shopping mall, you get some free samples, and then people try to convince you to buy something. It's not just, they give you these free samples, not just because they want you to see how wonderful this product is, even though, of course, this is also one of the reasons. But the main reason is to make you feel a little bit guilty if you do not buy this product in return, right? So they give you this little sample, and maybe the second sample, they talk to you a little bit about it, and then they ask you if you want to buy it. And if you don't want to do it, you might feel a little bit guilty. Now, this particular trick is a little bit subtle. Try to let people think that they came up with an idea themselves. This is a bit difficult. So to succeed in it, you have to really know the person, and you have to know about their wants, their desires. So, for example, let's say that again, Mary and John are talking about holidays, and Mary doesn't really like spending money on expensive holidays, but she really likes special offers. And John knows about it. And he also knows that Mary recently has been complaining a lot about the gloomy weather, cold weather, and he kind of tries to mention the idea that their friends have just bought a holiday somewhere at the beach, and what's more, this was a special offer. And he can kind of also start talking about gloomy weather, and maybe Mary will think about buying this holiday herself, and she will be convinced that this was her own idea. So this is letting people think that they came up with the idea themselves. The next trick, try to pay attention what people want, and if possible, offer it to them. So, for example, your boss doesn't want to give you some time off, but you heard somewhere that he was talking about a conference somewhere in maybe the country where you would like to go for holiday. and that he would like to have the company represented during this conference. So try to say that maybe you could go to this conference and then stay for a longer time for holiday. This way he is happy and you are happy. Of course, this is not possible in every situation, just in some situations, right? Okay, now next point, try to use we instead of you. Studies show that this is much more effective if we say we. For example, let's say that you say, we must do something about this product, and then we can earn more money, right? As a company, it's much better than saying you should do this or that, so that the company earns more money, because there is the sense of understanding and the sense that we are both in it, right? That we are together in it, and this is much more encouraging than kind of singling a person out and telling them that you must do this or that, you should do this or that. Now here we have a saying, ask for a mile when you only want just an inch, right? Mile and inch are British measures of length, right? So it would be maybe in our terms, ask for a kilometer when you only just want a centimeter, which means ask for more than you really want, right? Because if we ask for more than we want, the person refuses, and then just afterwards, we ask for a smaller thing, and this person has a feeling that by giving us the smaller thing, they have actually won something, they have gained, because they could do less than they were initially supposed to do, but they made us happy, right? So this is a good strategy too. Okay. Now, big analysis of various studies, about 107, as far as I remember, studies on 20,000 people, apparently showed that it's much easier to persuade people if we use arguments and counter arguments. So instead of just one-sided argument. So for example, let's say that a company wants to sell some accounting software to a business, right, to a business owner. And first, they think about the counter argument. So the counter argument is the argument against buying this software. So what could be the argument against buying such software? Maybe safety, let's say, right? For some reason, because maybe it's an online software, online program. So it's good to discuss the counter arguments first. So for example, to say that I know that safety is something which made many of our customers a bit worried. They thought this was a concern, and then to explain why actually this program is very safe. So first we mentioned the counter arguments, and then we replied to the counter arguments even before our potential customer had time to think about this counter argument, and according to research, this is much more effective. Now, Aristotle, the philosopher, said that there were three ways to persuade your audience: ethos, pathos, and logos. Now, ethos is talking about the credibility, so that a particular company or a particular person is trustworthy, so it's worth our trust, we can trust them. Pathos is appealing to the feelings. So, for example, in some social campaigns, when we want people to pay money for some charities, we can try to show suffering people, right, with some tears. This is appealing to emotions, and this is pathos. Logos is appealing to logic. So it's proving that doing this particular choice is the most logical choice. And apparently, if we make people laughing, they're much more willing to be persuaded. So remember about the sense of humor. Now, a few words about the yes ladder. The yes ladder is asking people a few questions to which they will more or less certainly say yes. And then, after all these questions, asking this main question, to which they will be tempted to say yes, because apparently we feel the need to be consistent. However, the research has shown that it's even very helpful if we at first ask a question which is completely unrelated to the final question we want to ask, right? So to ask a question about something which has nothing to do with what we want the person to do for us, if they say yes, there is a much higher probability that they will do what we want them to do. Another thing to remember is that people somehow tend to do what we expect them to do. So if you are a boss, for example, it's good to have positive expectations of your team rather than negative expectations, because people will be tempted to act according to your expectations. And there was some interesting research also in the field of teaching, where some teachers were told that some students, some particular students, were very talented, which was not true, but the teacher didn't know it. And it turned out that within 2 years, this really had a great influence on the students' performance. So the teacher expected the students to perform very well, and the students did perform much better than others. Now, it's important to make people, to make it seem urgent. If we want, for example, people to buy something, right? If we are trying to persuade people to make a decision to buy something or to do something from which they can gain, to show them that this is a short time offer, right? That's why there are so many offers like this: 1 day sale, last day offer, 24-hour sale, and so on and so forth, because people are much more tempted to make a decision in our favor. And the last thing is to try to look very confident about what you're talking about, because the more confident you look, the more credible you seem, and the more credible you seem, the more trustworthy you are, and people are more tempted to be persuaded by you. Okay, so these were some tricks and some things to remember as far as the art of persuasion is concerned. And now let's revise the vocabulary from the first part of our webinar. So, if you know the answer to one, please type it in the chat window. My girlfriend tried to me to go on a vegan diet. What word is it? If you know, please type it in the chat window. My girlfriend tried to me to go on a vegan diet. Do you have an idea what might be missing? If you do, Okay, so, so I see some answers convince, right? But pay attention, because here the girl tried to persuade me, right? Because she could convince me that vegan diet is good, but she tried to persuade me to go on a vegan diet, right? These are very similar. Oh, hello. These are similar words, but persuade here is the right word. However, look at point number 2, right? The politician tried to people that higher taxes were necessary. So what did the politician try to do? The politician tried, and here in point 2, this is about opinion, right? Because in point 1, this was about action, because the girlfriend wanted me to go on a vegan diet, so she tried to persuade me. Yes, but in number 2, of course, tried to convince. Just remember, convince. Yes, not convinced, because she tried to convince. Próbował przekonać, right? In Polish, we also say próbował przekonać, not próbował przekonał, right? That's why. Try to convince. Okay, and next one, number 3. I think we buy a bigger car. This is easy, I think. I think we buy a bigger car. And point 4 has the similar meaning, but I want you to start with O in point 4. So in point 3, very good, that's right. Point 3, this is should. We should buy a bigger car. In point 4, that's right. In 3, it's should. Now, how about 4? I think we, now the word which means exactly the same as should, but what is it? Can you remember? This one is not very often used, even though very good. Ought to. That's right. We ought to. The spelling, you will see the spelling in a second. Maybe I will not type it in the chat window. You will see it in the slide. Very good. We ought to. Now, point 5, a similar sentence. I still want to buy a bigger car. Very good. Ought to. It was point 4. Now point 5. How, what. Please also use the verb buy. I didn't use it here so that you think about the form of this verb yourself. So we want to buy a bigger, I want us to buy a bigger car, I suggest. So how would you say? How, what, a bigger car. Do you have an idea? What can we do in this sentence with the car? Does anyone have any idea? This is, I will help you. What about or how about, and what form of the verb buy will there be here? Very good. How about buying, or what about buying? Perfect, that's right. Now, number 6, very good, about buying. I suggest or I recommend less alcohol. So here, of course, this is about the verb to drink in the correct form. So I suggest, again, what form of the verb to drink will be in the sentence? I recommend, I suggest. Does anyone have any idea? It's similar to point 5, right? So I suggest, okay, I suggest drinking. I will help you here because maybe this is a bit difficult. I suggest drinking. I recommend drinking less alcohol. That's right. Okay, 7. Okay, drinking, right? Drinking was number 6. Okay, and now number 7. That you come to school on time, right? Someone is very often late. So the teacher says, that you come to school on time. And this person, this verb starts with the letter I, as you have it here. Do you know what it could be? I insist. That's right. Perfect. I insist that you come to school I insist that you come to school on time. Very good. And the last question today, number 8. Very good. Insist was number 7. That's right. And now number 8. It'd be better to buy a cheaper house. Here we are asking a question to kind of suggesting that maybe we should buy. That's right. So we can use would or we can use wouldn't. Both are correct here. Could it be better? I think we would rather say, could we buy a cheaper house? But I think we would say, would it or wouldn't it be better to buy a cheaper house? Okay, and now let's quickly have a look at the answers, just so that you have a look at the spelling. My girlfriend tried to persuade me to go on a vegan diet. The politician tried to convince, right? So remember, not convinced, but tried. Here you have the past, and you say tried to convince. I think we should buy a bigger car. I think we ought to. This ought to, it has quite a difficult spelling here. How or what about buying a bigger car? I suggest or I recommend drinking less alcohol. I insist that you come to school on time. And wouldn't it be better to buy a cheaper house? But of course, would is also possible. Okay, so if you have any questions, please type them in the chat window. Meanwhile, I will sum up. So we had some words like convince, insist, propose, suggest. How about, what about doing something? Would you like to do something? And should versus ought to. Now I am going to ask you to answer 2 short poll questions. So was the webinar useful? I will be most grateful. Thank you very much. And sorry, I'm ending the poll. And the second part. Would you like to take part in similar events in the future? Thank you very much. Thank you. Great. So thank you very much for our webinar tonight. Do not forget to follow us on social media. I am glad that the training was bright. I hope brilliant. I hope you will be able to persuade people very effectively. Thank you and goodbye.